Hello, everyone. Welcome back to some more Terra Mystica. Season 37 is upon us here. And as with last season, I'm going to start by doing a single faction selection video for all 4 games. Now, this time I'm actually going to do it live instead of in review, since it occurred to me. Since last season, I had not yet figured out how to structure a video with this asynchronous play on Snellman. This season, I figure I'll just... it's only my turn in one of the games so far. No one in any of my other 3 games has made enough moves for it to be my turn. So for me, it's going to be like a couple recording sessions, perhaps as many as 4. But for you, it'll just be one video. So this is the league setup. Here's all the players in the league. We have 4 American players. The Big Chris, Hans Karl Basicio, I don't know, and me. We have... is that China? Oh, if you mouse over, it even says China. You can't see it, but it is. I know what the Chinese flag looks like. This is just such a tiny picture of it that I wasn't sure. And, oh god, red, white, blue. Is that France? I can never remember. Like, there's a lot of countries that have... Netherlands, okay. I can't remember what order the flags all go in. Oh no, France has the vertical bars. Okay. And then, and that's Asel Donkey. And we have Stanla from Australia. No, New Zealand. Oh, I knew it was down there somewhere. Okay, they're just such tiny pictures. I don't know. Anyway, and so in our first game, let's go look at that now. This is the game in which I'm player 1, of course. And you can, of course, see the board, but the board never changes. What's important is the round scoring tiles, the opponents, not to be completely ignored. It seems less important as player 1 who your opponents are, because, you know, if you're player 2, what player 1, the faction player 1 has chosen may make a big difference to what you should choose. Whereas as player 1, you have free choice. I still think it's not completely inconsequential who your opponents are, and I'm actually going to try... looking at their tournament profiles. Just like, maybe I'll find out that the Big Chris, he loves Swarmlings. He picks Swarmlings every game. Maybe I'll find that out, and that'll help make some difference to my choice. Probably not, but it'll be cool just to see who we're up against anyway. And the other important thing is the bonus tiles. In the previous season, the bonus tiles were the main thing that I focused on. With kind of secondary importance going to the round scoring tiles and like kind of cursory interest in the color wheel, making sure I didn't get sandwiched or whatever. I've been trying to read up on like theory and good play, you know, basic level stuff. I'm only Division 6 here. But kind of like what people believe is common sense. And so one thing that I've learned is that top players, many of them, perhaps not all, seem to think it's more important what factions you're up against than the specific bonuses available and round scoring a lot of the time. If you're the 4th player to choose, you know, for example, something I had not previously realized is that, yes, you don't like to have color neighbors in general, but for some factions, it's a bigger deal than for others. For example, black and blue tend to get along okay because they don't like to live in the same place anyway. Blue kind of likes center to west, and black kind of likes east with maybe a little center. So it doesn't matter if you're partnered up. Whereas, for example, gray and green have like a bloody war on their hands every time they're both in a game. Because the obvious gray towns are like here and here, and the obvious green town is like here, and, you know, maybe here, but maybe here, right? So they're fighting over the exact same tiles most of the time. And so if you look at, like, you know, any game that involves the witches and the engineers, for example, both strong factions, but if they're both in a game, they're like fighting for 3rd place just by merit of who else is in the game. and the other two factions, almost no matter who they are, have a lock for 1 and 2. So that won't matter so much in this first game. Since I'm first to choose, I don't know what anyone else is doing, but I can sort of look at this and say, well, you know, okay, what other factions might be playable here, and let's make sure not to pick something that gets in a war with one of them. Could be a consideration. So I think let's start by looking at the other players, since that's kind of the closest we're going to get to a matchup information. And I probably won't learn anything very interesting from that, but we can also go through it quickly and then get back to the particular setup. So first up, we have the Big Chris, who's player 2. Oh, I could put them in order. Oh. Okay, let's do it like this. All right, we have the Big Chris, player 2, has been playing since season 8, but took a long break around season 18, and has tended... Oh, is this... Okay, this isn't his first time, or her first time out of Division 7, but tends to go up to Division 6 and then get clobbered back down to 7. This is the Big Chris's first time surviving Division 6, so congratulations on that. Managed to be in Division 6 twice in a row. Now, how about factions? Oh, also rating, 1082. I don't know how important rating is. Probably important. And what does Big Chris like to play? Well, I see a lot of Chaos Magicians, Engineers, and Witches, right? Darklings are generally regarded as the strongest faction, and Cultists are in, like, second place, and I noticed the Big Chris is not playing either of them very... Or I don't know if they're in second place. Engineers are considered very strong. Cultists are considered very strong. Witches are fine. Chaos Magicians, I think in top-level play, are generally regarded as not that great. But the Big Chris seems to do pretty well at getting second with them anyway. So, okay. We can sort of guess that the Big Chris might prefer to go for red, green, or gray, if possible. That's player 2. So Basicio is in our game, but has a display name of Sam. Their actual account name is Basicio, or Basic IO, who knows, but has set a display name of Sam for whatever reason. Has been playing in pretty much every season, with any exceptions? With no exceptions since season 17, which, what, 20 seasons ago? At 6 seasons a year? That's basically playing reliably for 3 and a bit years. And has made it up to Division 5 a couple times, maybe an average placement of 5, or of 6, I should say. And how about faction statistics? Again, a preference for green and gray, with Darklings coming third. And not much Cultists. That's interesting. Mermaids also considered reasonably fine. So the first 2 players we've looked at both like green and gray. It would be really quite nice for us if we could let them pick green and gray. And fight each other to the death, since, as we were discussing, the Witches and the Engineers hate each other. Alright, good to know. And lastly, player 4, Hans Karl, has been playing since season 23. I think without exception. I don't think I missed any here. Took a while to get out of Division 7, but then played 6 and 5 for a while, it looks like. And what does Hans Karl like to play? Engineers, Darklings. Here we see the first player who likes Nomads. I thought Nomads were generally considered fairly good, but apparently in top-level play, Nomads are not doing very well. So it sort of makes some sense that they're not very favored by these players. It used to be, I guess, a few years ago that a lot of games were Mermaids, Engineers, Nomads, and Darklings. But apparently the Nomads have fallen out of favor, and the Cultists have mostly taken their place. You get like Engineers, Darklings, Cultists, and, you know, maybe Witches. maybe mermaids, something like that. So that's interesting. None of the players in this game have chosen Darklings most often, whereas Darklings are generally regarded as the strongest faction. So that's quite interesting. They all kind of love engineers, which is fair. You know, here's me, by the way. Not really a wealth of information, but I like engineers as much as anybody else. Yeah, I wonder if I had picked cultists instead of nomads in that game, if I might have won it. I don't know. I think mermaids were the right choice, and mermaids won the game. So, anyway, so this has not informed me to a huge degree, but it does tell me I might expect gray. That's not a surprise, and perhaps green as well, and that I should be less worried about. I should not expect one of them to pick cultists in general, right? So now let's look at the board setup. The bonus tiles that are missing, I think that's kind of a more useful way to analyze than to list ones that are present. We don't have the priest bonus tile. We don't have shipping scoring plus power, and we don't have trading post scoring plus a worker. We do have all of the coin bonuses, including spade and cult actions. We have shipping. We have a worker for power. We have sanctuary, stronghold with 2 workers, and we have dwelling scoring. So I listed all of them anyway. Yeah, so sue me. So what factions really rely on the stuff that's missing here? Or what factions kind of don't like the stuff that's present? Mermaids generally are a fan of the shipping scoring, and that's not here. So you might not like mermaids that much this game. There are a few factions that really love the Sanctuary Stronghold bonus, and there are a few that unlove it, that want it not to be present. For example, cultists generally just don't like building those structures, except maybe pretty late. The other thing is that the engineers seem fairly weak here, to me. For a couple of reasons, which are sort of related. First, all of the coin bonuses are present, right? One thing the engineers thrive in is a low coin environment because they can build stuff cheaply. And the other is that, like, they're a faction that can scale up their economy quite well, and therefore they like to have scoring bonus tiles. Here, we're missing trading post scoring, and, though it's less important, shipping scoring. So the engineers will have less of an advantage in terms of building up than usual, and also because there's so many coins available. There's also, like, they're short 1 worker from the trading post scoring, which is kind of a big deal to them, but not huge. But also there's less ability for them to cash in. The Darklings are kind of sad that the priest bonus tile is missing. Anything else that really sticks out to me in terms of what's missing? Not really. How about the round scoring? So there's kind of an interesting thing going on in the first couple of rounds with Earth being repeated twice. So a faction that could get a lot of Earth early would probably be happy. One thing I notice is that there's not a lot of digging on the cult tracks. There's just round 1. Like, you have to get up to 4 Earth to get a spade from cult tracks, and that's the only time you can ever do it. And cult spades are one of the things that the cultists like best. They love to be able to get some cult spades so they don't have to spend other stuff on spades. Of course, they're perfectly proficient at getting other cult bonuses, but spades tend to be quite expensive because they cost 4 of something, and the cultists are kind of best at cashing in on those and are happy when it can happen. But the fact that there's a repeated early bonus, that's pretty great for the cultists. They can get up to 4, maybe even 4 very easily, maybe even 8 in round 1, and then enjoy a bunch of coins for free in round 2. Cultists don't much like the temple scoring bonus because they don't, like, of the ways that they get cult points, sending priests to the cult track is not their favorite. Other factions do that, not cultists. So this is kind of a bummer for them. The other thing is that Sanctuary Stronghold is present twice. And again, cultists don't much like that, because they don't like to build their Sanctuary or Stronghold in general. Also, it seems to me that this is just overall a low-scoring round set, right? Like, you can't really get any points in round 1. The spade bonus tile is occurring early enough that you won't get a ton from it, right? If it were in round 4, that would be a good reason to choose halflings, perhaps, or at least an argument for it. Dwellings in round 3 is fine, it's great. Temples in round 4 are kind of meh, like, that's not really what you usually want to be doing. Priests are more important early in the game and less important late in the game. So building a temple late is not something you're thrilled to do. You probably could, often you'll do it to get 4 points, but not so often would you do it just like if there weren't scoring bonuses here. And then Sanctuary Stronghold in the last round is fine. You can get a few points from it, but you know, a trading post bonus in the last round, you can cash in like 6 or 9 points without too much trouble. Or like a dwelling scoring round in the last round is especially good, because dwellings are so cheap you can put down a ton of them. So like a really high scoring game would include a town scoring in like one of the last 3, and trading post and dwelling scoring in the other 2 of the last 3. So the very low scoring here, combined with several missing scoring bonuses, well, 2, half of the scoring tiles down here missing, says to me that this will be a relatively low scoring game. And in such low scoring games, you tend to want to choose factions which, rather than being able to build a giant economy and then cash in on like scoring tiles and bonuses, you want a faction that can generate points on its own. And sort of like examples, I don't know. Witches are kind of in the middle there. They get like 10 or 15 points for being witches. They get a faction bonus for building towns. I kind of think of them as an economic flavored faction. But maybe I shouldn't. Just because they're so good at like spreading out to, not so much because of any of their faction powers, just because where green tiles are placed, they're pretty good at getting a strong economy early by placing a bunch of dwellings. So I'm not sure. The Witch is kind of middle of the road in terms of whether they're economic or scoring focused, I guess. But Dwarves and Darklings are 2 factions which really stand out to me as having at least some faction scoring. Dwarves have tunneling, which can produce a lot in the late game. And, you know, a turn 4 stronghold is a little early. You might prefer turn 5 for Dwarves. But if you want to cash in a bunch of workers at the end with tunneling, a stronghold near the end of the game is pretty nice for Dwarves. And there's this double Earth very early, and Dwarves start with 2 Earth, so that's like a thing worth considering, right? Halflings are kind of a scoring faction, but like not really. Just because they can cash in on spades, like they get some faction points. I don't know how many a halfling tends to get in a game, but it would not be a big surprise to me if you could do like 10 digs, place down a bunch of dwellings, basically. And Darklings score for their priests, spending them in digging. The other, like, I don't know, how much digging is available, right? On the one hand, there's very little cult digging. On the other hand, like, the spade bonus is here. And in terms of power for power action digging, it's fine. You're missing the shipping scoring tile, but that's not really anyone's favorite power tile anyway, except mermaids. These two are sort of more important for that, for generating power actions most of the time for anyone but mermaids. And so they're both here. So it seems like there's like a relatively high-ish amount. Yeah. Even just having bonus 1 makes the amount of digging fairly high. Digs are relatively easy to come by, unless you're the cultists who would prefer to get it up here. So I don't know. I've said a lot of things, and I haven't really told you what I think is right. But having evaluated all these factions, I've come to the unsurprising conclusion that Darklings are pretty good here. Darklings are pretty good everywhere. That's kind of one of their things, is they're just all around a strong faction that doesn't rely too much on any bonus tiles or any scoring tiles. They would prefer to have the priest bonus tile. They like priests. But they're also big fans of the Sanctuary Stronghold scoring tile because their Sanctuary is like one of their best features. You want to build that early. I was reading some like Darkling theory and statistics, and if you don't build your Sanctuary by round 3, like, okay, maybe that's the right thing to do sometimes as Darklings, but that's one of the things that makes them strongest, is getting a Sanctuary down in, like, the first few rounds. Like, almost the earlier you build it, the better you are. And some of that is just because, well, it's hard to build a Sanctuary, and if you can build one early, you must be in good shape just because you were able to build it. But also, like, I don't know. There's some analysis like, what if you build 2 temples versus a Sanctuary? That's similar in cost and produces similar stuff. And it's like, no, building a Sanctuary is just way, way better than building 2 temples for Darklings, apparently. Because you don't have to give up one of your other structures. You can keep that dwelling or trading post's income and just grab the Sanctuary to produce an extra priest and get a favor tile. Right, the Darklings Sanctuary is so great because it produces 2 priests instead of 1. And it just costs like a couple more coins than an ordinary faction. So it's like, you're thrilled to pay a couple coins more than someone else to get a priest income. So you would prefer to see Sanctuary Stronghold scoring in the first, like, ideally in round 2 or something. But it's worth building a Sanctuary even if it's not there. It's just so good. So I was thinking about the opening here, and some people were talking about what is the best round scoring setup for Darklings, and they kind of were like, well, this would be the best round 1 Darkling tile, so you can like dig some stuff, build a temple, get a bunch of coins to help you build the Sanctuary next round. Then you have Sanctuary scoring, and then maybe you have this, or something like that. I forget what they wanted in round 3. It might have been something else. Trading post scoring, so you get some coins? I don't remember. Someone else pointed out, actually, like, I would rather have the town scoring first, because getting a spade is, like, kind of cool, and it's not so hard for the Darklings to make it to 4 Earth in round 1, because they start with Earth and Water as their cult steps. And since this is a relatively low-scoring game, I think we're going to want scoring favor tiles. So, not a huge surprise. Earth 1 is pretty popular. But here, like with Earth, as a cult step that matters early, getting Earth 1 will be pretty cool. But since Darklings do pretty well at scoring with, like, other stuff, with priests, rushing out whatever you need to do to get an early sanctuary can sort of make up for not having Earth 1. You can just take like Water 1 instead. And so this is sort of my plan, is that actually like you get a temple turn 1, of course, because priests are insane. But you don't necessarily need favor 1 on turn 1. Did I say favor 1? Earth 1 is what I meant. You can start with Earth 2 for the extra worker, because one of the biggest handicaps the Darklings have is they start with 2 fewer workers in turn 1 in exchange for the extra priest that they get. So that kind of got me thinking, well, if I take Earth 2, I'll already be at 3 steps on the Earth Cult. And it'll be easy to get to 4 if I put another priest in. But if I do that, I'll be at like 6, because I'll be taking the 3-step. And wouldn't it be kind of cool to get to 8? With 2 very early Earth Cult incomes? And I think I could actually do that without it being a huge impediment to my forward progress. The idea that I have in mind for round 1 is to note, by the way, that there is no priest income tile, so I don't have to worry about any other players starting with a priest. So the only ways to get a priest in round 1 are the priest power action or the conversion action, which like really kind of blows. It would be a surprise to see anyone spend 5 power on a priest in round 1. They have more important things on their mind, I think. So what that kind of means is that I'll have exclusive access to priests in the first round, and I'll have 2 of them. And if I threw them both into Earth, that would be 5 steps, right? And if I, in addition to the 1 I start with, that's 6. And if I take Earth 2, that's 8. And that actually seems good. Like, it means I won't be digging anything this round. But that's sort of okay, because I won't really have the workers to build anywhere if I'm spending 2 on a trading post and 2 on a temple. So my first couple rounds, I'll be kind of worker starved, having not been able to build any dwellings. But after that, I'll have a ton of priests. I'll get a ton of coins here, and I can hopefully pick up Earth 1 as my second favor tile from my sanctuary in round 2. And then just start dumping dwellings all over the board. If favor 1 is gone by that time, well, you know, it's not great, but it's not the end of the world. I can always take Water 1 instead and score for trading posts. I think is sort of viable. Notice, by the way, dwelling scoring round in round 3, and I'll be just set up to finally start putting out dwellings at that point. I'm not sure what I'm doing with my priest in round 2. You could consider sending it to water, since I might not have enough workers to build any dwellings, and you kind of want to build them next round anyway. I could hang on to it for another dig in round 3. Those are kind of the 2 options that occur to me. So, where are we placing our starting dwellings? It'll kind of depend on the other factions, but I sort of expect cultists and dwarves. Those are the 2 factions that look best to me in this setup other than Darklings. So we might have some neighbors over here with the dwarves. So we could take like E10. And E10 G5 is like, I don't know. It's a thing that cultists sometimes do, is just like, don't ever upgrade shipping. Just build your entire network on this continent and then connect it up later by grabbing like F7. Put like a sanctuary here, get these 3 for a town, build another town down here, and then connect up with F7 when you're done. And with the dwarves, maybe you could actually do that. Because they'll be reasonably happy to provide you with more neighbors on H6 later. And that's enough to build a town. right? Get like these 3 tiles with 3 trading posts on them and a dwelling here or something. And they'll take this, so you have neighbors here. The other thing is that, you know, other popular Darkling starting tiles. This one's kind of okay, but it would be pretty cramped, probably. I don't know what the 4th faction in the game is going to be. And I don't really know that it'll be Cultists and Dwarves, but if I were picking all the players, it would be Cultists and Dwarves. And then something else. Obviously Darklings. We did see that one player really loves Chaos Magicians, and everybody that we're playing against sort of enjoys Witches. I would love for green and gray to both be in the game, but I don't think that's super likely. Witches seem alright here, but I think probably the players in Division 6 are aware that gray and green don't get along very well. So I don't really know exactly where we're going to go. Like, B5 is another interesting one because it's only 2 digs to get through B4 and you get to A8 for free. And then you can take A7 relatively cheaply. And that's possible to connect back up with something on the Eastern continent. You know, C1 is another possible starting location. You're never connecting up your shipping that way. But Darklings are kind of bad at doing that anyway, or so I'm told. And even here, like, spending 3 priests on shipping kind of stinks a lot. So having to connect up your shipping, even if you start like here and here, is kind of hard. I've definitely seen games where Darklings have like shipping all the way from here to here by like going through D5 and then B3, E5, right? Like, you know, with just 2, no, you need 3 really. I don't know. You could take E8, but it's kind of rough. So we might stick alone on the Eastern continent, or we might take like E10 B5 or E10 C1. Sort of depends who shows up. What bonus tile do I expect to get in the first round? Well, first of all, in the second round, I would love to have the Sanctuary scoring tile. I don't think that's super likely, because my round 1... Well, actually, how many actions am I taking on round 1? I'm taking a priest, that's 1. I'm upgrading to a temple, that's 2 more for 3. I'm sending 2 priests to Earth, that's 5. I can't really go any faster or slower if I want to take all those actions, because I don't have a dig and build I could split up, for example. So 5 actions. That's sort of an average number. So there's some possibility, like, okay, the Sanctuary Stronghold scoring tile is just generally good, because 2 workers is such a godsend in the early game. Even if you're not planning to build a Sanctuary or Stronghold in round 1, players often grab this. And so that's the reason that I'm thinking about how many actions I'm taking on round 1. Is it possible that someone else who took this might pass before me, and then I could grab it for round 2? It could happen. It doesn't seem very likely. And I'm not likely to get it on round 1 either. In order to get a Sanctuary, by the way, you need to have produced a total of 8 workers in the first 2 rounds, and we start with 4. So you need 4 more. And we're going to get 2 in round 2, right? No, 3 in round 2. 1 from our dwelling, 1 from just, like, you always get a worker, and 1 from our Earth 2 favor tile. So we just need to find 1 more worker, and the amount of coins that you need is, we need like 3 more coins. So like 1 worker and 3 coins basically is what we need. It should be pretty simple to get that through some combination of bonus tiles. I'd be pretty happy to get, well, I don't know. This one, a worker and power, is nice, because like, we'll want some power actions. I don't know exactly what, but we'll want them. We might very well find ourselves taking 6 coins in round 1. I'm sure we won't get this, which is fine, because I don't actually want it that much. I don't have workers for it. Or other players might take the coin things and, you know, leave us with this. It's like I'm certain that the spade action is getting taken. It always gets taken. It's very strong. The cult step, I would not be very happy to have to take that, because I can turn a cult step into a coin eventually, but only one, and I don't really need the 9th earth step for anything important. So I would rather take 6 coins than 4 in a cult step. Power and shipping, I'm not thrilled about. Power and worker, I would love. This, I would love. So those are kind of my 3 favorites. I don't know. I might have to settle for this just as a way to get some coins. But remember, we get 2 before we have to get the sanctuary. So that's about as far ahead as I've planned. Is like, I have an idea of what I'm going to do in the first 2 rounds. I have to adjust a little bit depending on who shows up and what bonus tiles they take. But that's my plan. The important thing, I guess, is to make sure that I have a neighbor somewhere. If I don't have a neighbor, it's all much, much worse. But since I expect gray in dwarves to be pretty strong, they should be happy to join me on F6. If that doesn't happen, I'll have to adjust my plan, I guess. I'm not sure exactly where I could go to court the cultists. Maybe the middle? It's pretty cramped. I would not like to be here. Anyway, so I said that I would do 1 video with faction selection for all 4 factions, but honestly, I talked for half an hour about why I think Darklings are good this game. So I think that that's actually a pretty reasonable length for a single video, and it means that I can release this without needing to wait for the other games to get around to me. So I'm just going to actually do 4 videos for faction selection, I guess, since apparently I like talking and theorizing. And then, once each game is over, I'll do the same thing I did last season of a retrospective stepping through the replay of the completed game. So it'll be 4 episodes early and 4 episodes much later, probably, in a month or so. Or perhaps even as long as almost 2 months. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to this season. It seems like Darklings are well positioned, at least in this game. And I hope to do well. Let's finish this episode with the exciting action of clicking the Darklings button and hitting save. Right? I commit to this action. Here we go. I've never been black in a tournament before. Should be exciting. All right, look at that. Hope you guys enjoyed this faction selection video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.